You walk into a room and feel it, the shift in energy. People straighten up, their voices get quieter, they look at you differently. This isn't fake power, this isn't manipulation, this is something deeper, something that comes from within. But here's what no one tells you about respect. It's not about being nice, it's not about being loved. In fact, trying to be loved might be the very thing that's keeping you powerless. 500 years ago, a man named Niccolò Machiavelli wrote something that most people still can't handle. He said it's better to be feared than loved. But he also said something else, something that changes everything. He said, never ever be hated. Most people get this wrong. They think fear means being a bully. They think it means being cruel. But that's not fear, that's hatred. And hatred will destroy you. So what's the difference and why does it matter for your life right now? Because right now you're probably doing one of two things. You're either trying so hard to be liked that you've made yourself invisible, or you're so angry at being invisible that you've started pushing people away. Both paths lead to the same place, nowhere. But there's a third way, a way that Machiavelli understood, a way that gets you respect without making enemies, a way that makes people take you seriously without making them want to hurt you. The truth is, you already know this works. You've seen it. Think about the people in your life who command real respect. They're not the loudest ones, they're not the meanest ones, but they're also not the ones who say yes to everything. They have something else, something that makes people listen when they speak, something that makes their boundaries mean something, something that makes their presence felt even when they're quiet. Machiavelli called this virtue. Not virtue like being good, virtue like being powerful, like being effective, like being someone who can't be ignored. But here's where it gets interesting, and where most people mess it up completely. Machiavelli lived in a world of princes and politics, but his insights aren't about ruling kingdoms. They're about ruling your own life, about not being a victim of other people's games, about having real power in a world that wants to keep you small. The problem is, most of us learn the wrong lessons about power. We learn that good people are weak, that strong people are mean, that you have to choose between being liked and being respected. But that's not true. That's just what people tell you to keep you confused, to keep you from figuring out how power really works. Real power isn't about force, it's about presence. It's about knowing who you are and not apologizing for it. It's about having boundaries that people can feel even when you don't say them out loud. Think about someone you know who has this quality. Maybe it's a teacher who never had to raise their voice to get attention. Maybe it's a parent who could stop an argument with just a look. Maybe it's a friend who somehow never gets taken advantage of. These people aren't cruel, they're not manipulative, but they're also not pushovers. They have something that makes others think twice before crossing them. And that something isn't meanness, it's self-respect. This is what Machiavelli meant by being feared. Not that people should be scared of you hurting them, but that people should understand you won't let them hurt you. There's a massive difference. When people fear you'll hurt them, they start planning to hurt you first. That's hatred. That's dangerous. That's what gets you destroyed. But when people understand you won't be walked on, they respect your boundaries. They take you seriously. They might not always like what you say, but they listen when you say it. This is the secret that changes everything. The difference between being respected and being hated isn't about what you do to other people. It's about what you don't let them do to you. Let me give you an example. Say someone at work keeps interrupting you in meetings. The hatred approach would be to embarrass them publicly, to get revenge, to make them look bad. But the respect approach is different. You don't attack them. You simply stop allowing it. You say, "I wasn't finished," and continue speaking. You don't smile while you say it. You don't apologize. You just state the boundary and hold it. Most people won't do this. They'll either stay silent and feel angry, or they'll explode and create drama. But both of these responses give your power away. The silent response teaches people they can walk on you. The explosive response makes you look unstable. Neither gets you respect. But when you calmly hold your ground without attacking, something shifts. People start to see you differently. They start to understand that you're not someone who can be pushed around, and they adjust their behavior accordingly. This is what Machiavelli understood about human nature. People test boundaries. It's not personal, it's just what we do. We push until we find resistance. And when we don't find resistance, we keep pushing. But when we do find resistance, when we encounter someone who knows their worth and won't compromise it, we respect that. We might not like it in the moment, but we respect it. The key is in how you create that resistance. If you do it with anger, with cruelty, with the intention to hurt, you create enemies. People will smile to your face and plot behind your back. But if you do it with calm certainty, with self-respect, with the simple understanding that you matter, you create something different. You create respect. Here's what this looks like in real life. You don't argue with people who aren't arguing in good faith. You don't explain yourself to people who've already decided not to understand you. You don't chase people who are pulling away. These aren't cruel acts. They're acts of self-preservation. They're ways of saying, I value myself too much to participate in this. And here's the strange thing that happens when you start living this way. People who used to dismiss you start paying attention. People who used to interrupt you start listening. People who used to make demands start making requests. Not because you threatened them, not because you were mean to them, but because you stopped teaching them that your boundaries don't matter. This is the difference between fear and hatred that most people never understand. Fear, in this context, isn't about being afraid of harm. It's about understanding consequences. It's about recognizing that actions have results. When someone understands that treating you poorly will result in you removing your presence, your energy, your cooperation from their life, they become more careful about how they treat you. That's healthy fear. That's respect. But when someone thinks you might try to destroy them, hurt them, or get revenge, they become defensive. They start looking for ways to strike first. That's hatred. That's dangerous. The wisdom is in knowing the difference, and in knowing that you can inspire the first without creating the second. But here's where it gets even deeper. Most of us learned the wrong model of power as children. We watched adults who either exploded or disappeared. Parents who either yelled or went silent. Teachers who either punished harshly or let chaos reign. We never saw the middle path. The person who could be firm without being cruel, who could say no without being mean, who could hold boundaries without building walls. So we grew up thinking those were our only options. Be aggressive or be passive. Fight or flight. Attack or surrender. But Machiavelli knew something different. He studied leaders who lasted, not the ones who burned bright and crashed, not the ones who faded into nothing, the ones who built something that endured. And what he found was this: the leaders who lasted longest weren't the cruelest or the kindest. They were the most consistent. People knew what to expect from them. They had clear principles and they stuck to them. Think about this in your own life. The people you respect most aren't necessarily the nicest people you know. They're the people whose word means something, who do what they say they'll do, who have standards and maintain them. These people might disappoint you sometimes. They might say no when you want them to say yes, but you never have to guess where you stand with them. You never have to wonder if they mean what they say. This consistency is what creates real trust, and trust is what creates real respect. But here's the trap that catches most people. They think consistency means being rigid. They think having principles means being judgmental. They think having standards means being impossible to please. That's not what Machiavelli meant at all. He wasn't talking about being inflexible. He was talking about being reliable, about being someone people can count on to be themselves. This is huge, because most people are performing all the time. They're different with their boss than with their friends, different with their family than with strangers, different when they want something than when they don't. And people can feel this. They can sense when someone is being authentic and when someone is putting on a show, and they respond accordingly. When someone is authentic, even if you don't like everything about them, you know what you're dealing with. You can trust them to be themselves. That creates a foundation for real relationship. But when someone is always performing, always adjusting, always trying to be what they think you want, you never know who they really are, and you can't respect what you can't see. This is why trying to be liked often backfires, because likability based on performance isn't real. It's conditional. It depends on you continuing to perform, and that's exhausting. Real respect comes from people knowing who you are and choosing to engage with that person, not with the version you think they want to see, not with the mask you wear to be accepted, with you. But showing up as yourself requires something that most people don't have. It requires self-acceptance. Because you can't be authentic with others if you're not honest with yourself. And this is where the real work begins. Not in changing how others see you, but in changing how you see yourself, in accepting the parts of you that you've been trying to hide, in owning your power instead of pretending you don't have any. Because here's what Machiavelli understood about human nature. Power exists whether you acknowledge it or not. You have influence whether you admit it or not. You affect other people whether you mean to or not. The question isn't whether you have power. The question is whether you'll own it responsibly, whether you'll use it consciously, whether you'll direct it towards something meaningful. Most people are afraid of their own power. They've seen it misused. They've seen it destroy relationships. They've seen it corrupt people they loved. So they try to pretend they don't have any. They make themselves small. They apologize for existing. They try to be harmless. But harmless isn't the same as good, and powerless isn't the same as pure. Sometimes the most harmful thing you can do is nothing. Sometimes the most destructive choice is to refuse to act. When you deny your power, you don't eliminate it. You just make it unconscious. And unconscious power is dangerous power. It comes out sideways, in passive aggression, in manipulation, in resentment. The person who pretends to have no power often controls through guilt, through making others feel bad for having boundaries, through playing victim when they don't get their way. This is actually more manipulative than honest power, because at least honest power is visible. You can see it coming. You can respond to it directly. But hidden power is sneaky. It makes you feel crazy. It makes you doubt yourself. It makes you wonder if you're the bad guy for having needs. This is why owning your power is actually more ethical than denying it. Because when you own it, you can use it cleanly. You can be direct instead of manipulative. You can be honest instead of passive-aggressive. And people prefer this. Even when they don't like your answer, they prefer honesty to games. Even when your boundaries disappoint them, they prefer clarity to confusion. Think about the relationships in your life where you feel most respected. I guarantee you these aren't relationships where you're trying to be liked. These are relationships where you're being yourself, where you have boundaries, where you don't shrink to make others comfortable. Now think about the relationships where you feel least respected. These are probably the ones where you're working hardest to be liked, where you're saying yes when you mean no, where you're making yourself smaller to avoid conflict. This is the trap that most people fall into. They think being agreeable will make them loved. But it doesn't. It makes them useful. And there's a big difference between being loved and being used. Machiavelli understood this. He knew that people don't respect what they can easily control. They don't value what costs them nothing. They don't appreciate what they can take for granted. This doesn't mean you should be difficult or demanding. It means you should be honest about what you want, about what you won't accept, about who you are. Because here's the truth that no one wants to tell you. The version of you that tries to please everyone isn't the real you. It's a performance, and people can sense performances. They might enjoy the show, but they don't respect the performer. Real respect comes from being genuine, from having standards, from knowing your worth and not negotiating it away for temporary comfort. This is scary for most people because it means some people won't like you. Some people will be uncomfortable with your boundaries. Some people will try to make you feel guilty for having standards. But here's what Machiavelli knew, and what you need to know. The approval of people who don't respect you is worthless. The comfort of people who want to use you is temporary. The peace you get from avoiding conflict is an illusion. Real peace comes from self-respect. Real comfort comes from knowing you can handle whatever comes your way. Real approval comes from approving of yourself. When you live from this place, something shifts in how people see you. You become someone who can't be easily manipulated, someone who can't be taken for granted, someone whose word means something because they don't give it lightly. This is what it means to be feared in the way Machiavelli meant it. Not that people should be afraid of you, but that they should understand you have standards, that crossing you has consequences, that you're not someone who can be walked on. And when you combine this with genuine care for others, when you use your strength to protect rather than to harm, when you stand firm in your boundaries while still being kind in your heart, you create something powerful. You create respect without hatred, fear without cruelty, strength without violence. This is the balance that changes everything. This is the secret that most people never learn. This is the difference between being powerful and being destructive. Because the truth is, we all have power. The question isn't whether you have it. The question is how you use it. Do you use it to hurt others? Do you give it away to avoid conflict? Or do you use it to create respect? The choice is yours. But now you know what Machiavelli knew. That real power isn't about what you do to others. It's about what you don't let them do to you. You don't have to be cruel to be strong. You don't have to be mean to be respected. You don't have to hurt others to protect yourself. But you also don't have to be small to be good. You don't have to be quiet to be kind. You don't have to disappear to keep the peace. There's another way, a way that honors both your strength and your heart, a way that commands respect without creating enemies, a way that makes you someone who can't be ignored without making you someone who needs to be stopped. This is your invitation to stop choosing between being liked and being respected, to stop believing that you have to be weak to be good, to stop thinking that having boundaries makes you bad. You can be both strong and kind. You can be both firm and loving. You can be both respected and respectable. The world needs people who understand this balance, people who can stand up without tearing others down, people who can be powerful without being cruel. The question is, will you be one of them? If this helped you see something new about yourself, if it helped you remember that you don't have to choose between being good and being strong, let me know in the comments. You're not alone in figuring this out. And if you're ready to learn more about the psychology of power, about the difference between manipulation and influence, about how to be strong without being cruel, subscribe. Because there's so much more to explore about what it really means to be powerful in this world.